between the two? Walking you through the code or live coding everything? I don't know whether you guys have access to the chat.
Hello,
Anthony,
Kevin.
yes.
The chat is not available.
Oh, let me see what I can do about that. Okay. Let me do this. Maybe someone can help me identify the settings quite fast. So I think it's under controls. Chat is enabled. Okay.
Maybe someone else can confirm on their side. Maybe
Okay.
they do not have the chat option.
Can you guys, are you guys able to access the chat? Anthony, I have a lot of people in the call. Let us know so that we can go on fast because I can admit. I think everything is okay. People in the organization guest. Meeting access to everyone. I don't know. I think that's it. You guys are right? Anyway. Good. Let's start. I think I'd like first to welcome you guys and thank you so much for joining this call. My name is Kevin Chomba. I'm a software engineer at CRUD Tech and also a Microsoft MVP on web development in Cosmos DB. And also a former, or to go in goal, let me say, so whichever works for you guys as a title, that's okay. So today we have a call with us. This is a continuation of the previous call. So we have this series of backend development with Node.js. Specifically, we're using Nest, Drizzle ORM, Postgres, and TypeScript tokens as our stack. So today we will be doing more of CRUD and also DB modeling. So these are relationships. So I think we can get started on that. Okay. So today we shall be creating just a simple API. By the way, whichever you build doesn't matter. The most important thing is the concept. So the concept today is how to create a RESTful API. It will be a complete CRUD with everything you need to build an API regarding creating post, request, get, fetch, patch, delete, those type of requests. This will be a good fit for you if you want to learn something like that. So we shall do things like pagination, filtering, validation, dockerizing the whole application, building schemas, and also writing some small seed scripts which can help you generate fake data And also we shall test our endpoints with our REST client. So let's jump on it. So our tech stack is still the same. Why am I choosing this? I think this is the best test stack to use if you're building with Node. According to my experience, even at work, most of people use Nest. But they don't use Drizzle, they use type ORM, but I think Drizzle is the future. Postgres, the database doesn't matter. Any SQLite database, we just work. They just have some few differences. Like Postgres have things like enums. Microsoft SQL doesn't have native support for enums. Um, Postgres have things like Python. So you'll find that they have just small differences, but else any SQLite database you can just plug in. Okay, we will be using TypeScript 6 or 5. We are not in 7 yet. Zod and then Docker Compose. So the goal is CRUD and database modeling. So what I meant by database modeling is more of like thinking of the database even before you start creating the APIs. So if you're able to model your database well, know which is a table, what will go where, what are um, the keys you have. So these can be like primary keys, foreign keys, composite keys, things like the schemas and those type of things. This will help you build a good API because you already know how the data flows all the way from a request all the way to the data getting into the database layer. And speaking about tables, we shall also be discussing relationships. So relationships is how one table relates to the other, okay? And this is matched with something we call cardinality. Computer science students know this. So cardinality is where is the number, like one to many, one to one. So when one table relates to the other, and the relationship is one to one, so we call that as one to one cardinality. So a good example is where you have like employee table and employee profile. So the profile, let's say the profile will just contain some few things that relate to the employee table in a one-to-one scenario. And then think of one-to-many as like an employee and departments. So one department can have many employees. So that is one-to-many. We also have a situation where we have many-to-many, where we have like employees and roles. So in many companies, you find that one employee can have two or three or more roles, and a role can belong to many employees. So a role like software engineer, I'm a software engineer, can belong to me or any other employee. So in such a scenario, we have many to many type of relationship. Once you understand these relationships and how to build schemas, you'll be good to create almost any SQL-based API. So how do we model these things? So you can use ORMs. So for example, Drizzle. Drizzle helps you to connect between one table to the other via a foreign key. So in all types of relationships, there must be a type of key which is connecting one table to the other. So foreign key, for example, for this case is an ID, which is a primary key in the foreign table. So a foreign key will connect one table to the other, and that's create the relationships. So the way you do things like schema first type of design in an API is where you create a schema, you generate SQL. How do you generate SQL? This is mostly based with the libraries you have. So for our case, we're using Drizzle. So Drizzle will help us generate migration files. So these migration files will map a schema into an equivalent of an SQL table or SQL statements. So and then you can run these migrations to apply to whatever you wrote in the schema to go inside the database. So, and then from there, since we are doing schema first, Drizzle will help us to create types. We have two major types we can use. That is infer select and infer insert. So every time we are selecting data, we can use these types to guard our functions or methods. The same when we're inserting data. So when I mean guard is where you are like restricting the type of data that is going inside your function. Of course, the function will execute some few methods you have there, or classes, or whichever works for you. And then you're able to do like things like inserting data, deleting data, all those CRUD functionalities. So so this is what I meant by schema first. So every time you want to change something, you go to the schema, you change it, you run migrations, and then that is applied. So this is a pattern where whether you're using Node, whether you're using C# and .NET and EF Core, you'll find this type of pattern. It is schema first design. Again, when you're fetching a lot of data, you need to think of things like pagination and filtering. And on top of that, you need to think of sorting. So this is something that people kind of just assume, but it will cost you dearly if you're doing things like you're fetching a lot of data in a API which you're building. Again, we shall also be doing para count queries. So we shall be doing joins. So joins will help us to execute different SQL statements at a go. So saving us the cost of fetching data from each table, and these will cost us things like computation cost for database, that is if you have deployed your database on a cloud platform. Okay, so these are the things you learn on the way. And these are the agenda of what we're going to do today. And these are the prerequisites. You need to have these things so that you can do these workshop well or easily. These are things you take home. I can assure you the template we'll have for this call. It's something that you can use to build any API and go to production with it. I've used it in my own apps which I'm creating, or one which is already in production. I can assure it. It's just something good. So up to there, I think we can jump onto the demo and try to build something from scratch, which people have not shared anything. I don't know whether people have access to chat. Do you guys want us to go through the code or like code everything from scratch? I don't know that people have access to the chat, but I think we can continue. So let me end the slide.
Kevin,
Yes.
yeah, for me, I think we can go through the code given the time we have, maybe.
Yeah, I was also thinking, should we make should we be starting maybe 7:20 so that people can have like 10 minutes to join? Maybe that can help us with that. Okay, so let me first explain the code. And for those of us who want us to maybe start from scratch, let me know so that we can have those sessions with also enough time to do that. Okay, Valentine, you're off mute. Okay, so let me continue. So this is a nice project. Today I must create one. so I can show you. I think we can bootstrap a Nest application to where this is, and then from there people will have just an idea to continue. So let's say this is you've opened a folder using VS Code. So the commands to create is just simple, nest, new, and then the name of the project. So today can be something like CRUD, like that. And then this will ask you which, I hope this is visible. So this will ask you which type of package manager you want. So I like using PNPM. You should be also doing that. And then it will create this application. So what I want to do, let me open the, let me just open this using VS Code quite fast. So this is a project. So the project will have like some files, which probably we don't need. And these files are something like app control aspects and other things. So what I like doing is just deleting everything except app.module. So I'll just delete this. Delete the specs files on the service. So I'm just left with main.ts and app.module. Okay. And this is cool. This is clean. So some of the things we need for today's call are just some few packages I need to install. So I'll just walk you through that quite fast. So the way you install packages is just doing the npm, and then the first package we need is Drizzle ORM. So let me just grab it. So we need Drizzle. We also need PG for Postgres driver. I think Zod. Okay. And then you just press enter. So this should be fast for me because I'm using PNPM, so it's not going to download a lot of things. It's going to fetch most of the things from my local cache. Okay. So as this is going on, something I like creating for these, especially when we come to do things like Drizzle, like migrating, those type of things, is just some few scripts to enable us to do migrations. So the first one, let me just grab them, is Drizzle. No, just put them here. So when you get this error, just click on PNPF approve builds. So just press enter like that. And this will, okay, it won't do that because I missing something. Let me see. We have a comma, extra comma there. Okay. So let me just approve the builds again. It's supposed to give me a list of things, which you should just use space on your keyboard and then page down or arrow down to go to the next one, and then page, and then enter, then yes to approve this. So it's just a security measure for PNPM to approve the post install scripts. Remember in JavaScript, while we are having a lot of attacks. So yeah. So as I was saying, these will help me generate migrations, just doing Drizzle git generate. DB migrate. So this can be anything. You can just even do just migrate. It's not a must for it to be DB. You just make them like that. Okay. I like just making them this so that people can understand. So migrate will just push the migration files to my database. If I'm using an online database, you just use push instead of migrate. Then you have your studio. So this looks good and ready to go. So after this, the next thing I usually do is create some Docker Compose files. This will help me to do a lot of things, like create my database. So Docker Compose.yaml, like that. And for this, I'm not going to type everything, I'll just explain. So zooming in a little bit, I have like several services, Postgres, and the API, just in case you want to dockerize everything. So for the Postgres is the most important. I'm just getting my image from Alpine, so it's small. And then I'm passing in username, password, and Postgres, all of them from .env variables. And if .env variables are not available, I'm injecting the default Postgres as the defaults. That's what these lines of code mean. Every time I run the Docker Compose, I want to create some databases immediately. So to do that, I have these scripts which I usually store it inside in the folder Docker, Postgres, init, and since we don't have them, can just create that quick. So we have Docker. So inside Docker, I'm just going to create a folder Postgres, and then inside there, I can just copy my script file like that. So this is a file. It simply just creates two databases, one for dev and production. You can avoid it or you can just use it. The idea is that our app should have like two environmental variables. Most of your work when you're working on a real company, you'll find that you'll always have several environmental variables for storing secrets. So env dot, let's say something like development, like that. Sorry, I need to dot. Okay, .env. So I can just copy these, paste it, rename it to, I have a dev, let me say I have a prod. Like that. Okay, and maybe you can have a local. This is important. Let me just explain why we need all this. So I like using like .env. So other companies, you might see they're using something like staging. It doesn't matter. Like that, .local. So something important is that .env.local is prioritized. Let's say you are in a React application. Anything with a .local, whether it is in Node or it is in .NET, it is prioritized. So it means that this is for local development. So just in case you have a development branch, let's say that your branching strategy has development branch, staging branch, and production, which is the main branch. So if that is your branching strategy, you might have those files with you here. So that's what we are trying to do. So for these, I'm just going to copy the .env inside these things. So for example, in the development, I'll have this. So we have just support, we have our DB password and DB name, okay, and the DB port host. And then we have the URL for connecting to the database. So simply, it's just have like the username, password, and then this is the domain, and then the name of the database. Okay, so that's how the URL is. So now that we have that ready, anyway, can close that. Now that we have that ready, the next thing I like having is a Docker file, because in the Docker Compose for the API, in the build step, okay, we have context is coming from the root. So this root means is where you will find the Docker file, the context, which is just Docker file. So this is the file which will help us Dockerize the API into a Docker container. Okay. The container name will be called like this. These are the ports, and it depends with Postgres. So when Postgres is healthy, that's when it will run. So for that, you need a Docker file. I'm just going to paste it here like that. So we have our Docker file, which I'm going to explain in like 2 seconds. So in the world of containers, you must start with like a container. So we are inside this file. What this file will do, it will call node. And why you're using Node Alpine? It's because it is a minimalistic version of Node, which is compatible with Linux. So we are calling Node as a, and then we are naming it as a builder. We are creating a working directory inside the container, and then we are enabling PNPM, and then we are copying package.json and package.log, and then installing the dependencies. And then we are copying all other files, so be it the .env and other files inside that directory. We are copying it from the root of our directory to the root of our container image. And then we're building that. And then if you're trying to build this as prod, the only difference is that we are specifically freezing our installs. So we are free to freeze a log file is to make sure that you're installing the specific version of libraries, and also at the same time, you're making sure that you're not installing the dev dependencies, I think. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then we are copying all the files from app.dist to our dist. So and then we're exposing our API to port 8000. Then we are starting our API using this command, that node dist main, and then we start our API. Cool. That is quick and fast and sweet. So I think the next thing is now building the API. So if you're new to Nest, we have this main.ts. We also have app.module.main.ts, which we have here, which to be honest, I need to remove these things. Yeah, so this is like the default minimalistic version of this. So what I like doing is first, someone is sharing his, okay. Who is sharing? Okay. Am I still sharing? Yeah, okay. So I think someone took the controls. Please don't do that. Okay, let me continue. Okay. So inside this file, the first thing I should do is to create a config. So inside source, I'm just going to create config file, and then inside config, I'll create index. Yes. So this will help me to create type safe configurations. Okay. So the first one I usually create is I will first need to import from Zod. Okay. And then I'll create my config schema. Okay. So this is the Zod schema first pattern, as I call it. Okay. So after we create our schema, we shall create a type for it, just like you have seen in this. And we shall also create a validator for it. So a validator will be at the bottom here, like that, which should return the config schema when it is passed. So I'm expecting myself here to return something like that. Okay. So this is basically the blueprint of what my schema will be doing. Okay. So we have our schema, we have our type, we also have our validator, if you think about it. So basically, let me just grab this quick. So inside the schema, as our schema, this is where we set up our things like port. I want it to be a number, an integer, so meaning you can't have decimals, be positive, and default is 3000 if it is not provided by a .env. The same goes to the rest. The node environment. This can be development, production, whichever, like I said. And then we have our default Postgres URL if it is not provided. Cool. So if I hover on config, as you can see, guys, I have a type safe object, so I can see what type is supposed to go to my database URL. And then on this function, what I'm going to do here is pull things from process.env and then inject them here so that I can validate them. So simply I can just get these quick and paste them here. So these values should be the same as this. So if you check this function, which I'm just calling it default, it is returning a config, and this config is observing the types we need from our schema. So this is a pattern I like. So with this now, if I go to something like main.ts, as you can see, this is not a type same thing. Okay. So the first thing we see here is something complaining. So promise must be. So what I like doing is just adding void because I'm not returning anything. So that should correct that thing. And then the next thing is that to make sure that in the Bootstrap application, I'm doing something cool. So the first thing I need to do is to make sure that I'm typing my config services, which for now I don't have. So inside here, I need to create config services. So I'm just going to create a variable known as config services. So this should be equals to app.get. So basically we usually have app dot, it has several methods. So if you do get and then call config services as it is, this is still not type safe. So as you can see, unsafe assignment, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, and again, what I want to do is this config service, I want to type this generic. Okay. So the way I do that is just by adding brackets. So like this. So, sorry, like this. And then here I add just config like that. So config is not imported. So I have to import it. And since I'm importing it as a type, I need to add type here like that. So if I save this, I should have a config service created, but its value is not read. So this config service should give me access to ports. Okay, so I can just come here and now say const port is equals config get or throw, and then call port and then any file type. And then here, as you can see, Copilot is trying to help us. We can now have a port, which for some reason it's losing its type, but it's a better way of calling it, so that if the port is not available, we can still stick back to our schema default value, which should be 3000. So this is good. If it's not available, it will throw an error. Okay. And then it is going to infer the type. So for now, it's any, it will be a number later. So with this now, I think the setup is complete for app. I don't know why this is throwing an error, by the way. Unsafe assignment of the any. But anyway, it should not throw any error. But we shall check it out. Do we have config services? Missing config. Okay, just get it. So I need to import. Yep, I need to import Nest from this. And then I'm missing this because I didn't install it. So npm add this. So this helps us to, in the Nest application, to access process.env so that we can have access to environmental variables. So with this, if I reload my app, this should not throw any type of error. Let's see. That's why we need the TypeScript 7. It's a little bit faster. Okay, this looks good. This looks good. Now we have our port as type number. Cool. We are getting everything, and as you can see, config service is aware of that, of things like ports, node env, database user, database password. Everything is just cool. So from this, let's go to app.module, and then we shall walk through the other things faster. So app.module, this is where we connect a lot of things. So the first thing I need to do is to make sure that our API is aware of which environment we are in. So for example, in the development, we have node. Okay. Oh, we need, let me grab that. Anyway, we need node. Let me just even write it here so that I can just, well, okay, let me just start. We need, since we are in development, we can assign it like that. We need our API to be able to know which environment we are in. So inside here, this is where we define those things. So I'm going straight to fetching which environment we are in. So by doing something like that, const node env is equals to this. By default, it will be development. And to resolve where we are getting the .env files, we need to call join and the magic dd directory name like this. So this will help us to get access to where these files are. So I can add these comments, even though you should see them in the repo we have on, like that. So for these things to work well, we need to inject them here. So in the module, we have two ways of doing things. So we need to import things, and there's this method we usually use here. We call it config we just call it config module that. So config module, we need to import it. It's from next config, the library I just installed. Not DDR. Directory name, we also need to import it like that. We also need to import what is it, join. So we have join. Yeah, we have join. Yeah, I think everything is cool. So inside here is where we are going to define all those env variables and how to get them. So the first thing I usually say is that I want my .env file to be available globally. So this is global. We need to put it to true. And then we want to cache our .env file. So this cache, we set it to true. And then the other thing is that we won't be doing this, but you can expand. You can expand your environmental variables and set it to true. And the most important thing is that we need to load our .env files. Where are we loading them from? Config. And config is from where? So config is not from there. I want config to come from the same file, the folder we created. So this should be just config like that. Okay. So inside config, we are importing this function. Okay. So it will give us all these things. Anyway, so because it is default export, we just import them like that without the brackets, because those are it's not unnamed export. So we have that with us. We can load all the .env. So the next thing is just to say which type of .env files we need. So to do this, I usually like using the join. So we are joining the .env directory, which is this, the directory, with env and then the node environment. So .env.development will be this. With this. With a local, it will also be picked. Okay. And also, even if it is just a .env file, it will also be picked. With that, you're good to go doing anything with that. Yeah. So let's just simply set up this, and then the other things I'll just show you. So for the app, I know I'll need modules. So the module architecture, I like just doing modules. And then inside modules, this is where I'll have different modules. So a module is something like department, employees, and project, the things which are going to do. So let me just add these as department. We shall also have something like is, and lastly we shall have so anything that requires CRUD, in short, is going to go under modules. So that's how clean that looks like. So outside here, the things that we need to use in our modules that are common, where do we put them? So we create a common folder. So this is where we shall have things like decorators, errors, and pipes. So inside here, I'll have things like decorators. This is a decorator, by the way, module, but you can create your custom decorator. So we shall also have helpers for errors. We shall also have pipes. Yep. So this is a folder structure. We have a common config modules, and the only remaining thing is the database. So simply database like that. So inside database folder, this is where we create everything. So the first thing I need to create is a database.module. .ts. Okay. So this database.module will help us connect a lot of things. I also need a constant file like that. Database.constant, and then I can create relationships file and schema file. Since I have them, I'll just copy them. So inside here, I need to paste relationship and schema. So schema, this is what it will export everything. And these schemas will be used to do something else. I shall show you. So relationships, this is where we declare the things we were discussing. So one-to-many, one-to-one, and many-to-many. Okay. So I shall explain this file just in a second. I don't know how we are doing on time. Oh my God, we have past time. We have like some few minutes. Okay. So our database, let's first set up module because the other things will be easy. So inside the module, this is where we configure the connection between our database and Drizzle ORM. So let me everything, then explain. So this is a file. It has a lot of imports, but don't worry about them. The most important thing is that under the module decorator, we have providers. We need to create a provider known as pool, and then inject config service so that you can get access to all our environmental variables. As we said, you can see we are typing them here, then we are inferring them as true. And then inside the connection string, we are calling config service.get database URL. So this will help us grab this guy via config, this config. So this functional object will give us access to database URL, which will be fetched from the .env. That's how we are getting that. So under this, and our module, since we have that, now using the connection string, we can be able to create a pool. So for database connection to happen, you can connect it directly or you can connect with a pool. A pool is the best option so that it can handle when we have a lot of connections. So when a lot of people are interacting with the API and the API is just relying to one database, so a pool is very important because it will be able to spread all those connections and close the ones which are not needed. So we are passing the connection string, so we are returning a pool as a provider. And then since we have a provider now, we can provide another provider, that is Drizzle. So the Drizzle, which we are importing from our constants, which will be, let me just, and those concepts is just some variables. So inside here, we are creating a constant known as Drizzle coming from symbol. That's the way we create constants for Nest that we need to inject as providers. Okay, and then we're also importing all the schemas and then typing our type, which is DrizzleDB, to have all the schemas we shall create for our API. Cool. So here we are injecting pool because we have created a pool connection here, which is a provider. You can inject the provider. Okay. So after injecting it, we can use it now using the use factory method. So this pool, which you are using it in this arrow function, it's going to return a Drizzle DB object. So this Drizzle DB object is going to rely on the pool, which is basically the connection. And also we're going to pass the schema, which is going to get all the schemas in our API, okay? For now, they are here, but they are empty because inside these files, inside the module, we have not created those schemas, but they will be there as we are done. So that's how this file is important. After that, now we have our providers ready with everything, and then we're exporting the Drizzle object which we created here, which is basically the file with the connection to the database. We're also creating something very important known as on application shutdown. So this helps us to stop or close the connections when the API is stopped or something like that. So when the API is stopped, this will close the database connections. And simply we are just creating this function, which will do that, which will close the pool. Okay. And where do we use this? We use this file inside our main.ts. So in our main.ts here, we need to bring in that. So we need just to call app. Yeah, we just need to call app enable shutdown hooks. So that should be able to stop any hook that can be used to shut down. And one of those hooks is on application shutdown, which implements database module. I think with that, all the difficult parts are explained and well understood. And this helps us to now go ahead to talk about our CRUD now. So I'm just going to grab these modules directly from my cheat sheet here. So let me grab them and then let me delete this. So inside modules, I'm going to paste them. Okay. So let me reload this to make sure that VS Code knows that all files are in now. So here we have departments. We also have employees. We also have projects. Cool. In each file, we have a schema folder, as you can see. And if I close all this, and inside every schema, we have now the relationships and the tables. So we have the department table. And remember what we said about schema first. So schema first is where we're exporting our types, the types we were talking about for inferences. To just jog your brain, you remember this. So where is this? Seems I can't find it. Okay, schema first. Anyway. Oh, here it is. The infer types from the schema. Yeah, here it is. Infer, select and infer inside. So the infer types is where we are doing that. So we are just taking the type of the department, which is basically our table, and then inferring the thread. So basically every time you use this to type your method, it will be aware of this. And we're just calling it as department row. And new department row is for inserting something. So when we are doing those types of operation inside my database service, for example, you shall simply say that when I'm creating a department, I expect the return time to be the department row, which is the type we have just talked about under schemas. So to this side, okay. It is this type, okay. This infer insert type. So it is new department row. That is what we are typing our promise, okay, which is cool. So every operation we do here, it's going to return this. This goes to find. Find will now use a select, so the department row will be the returned type. And also we are using paginated results. So we are getting paginated result. It's coming from our DTOs. So this is going to paginate data so that you can have pages. Let's now discuss this piece of code, which is where we're doing filtering and sorting. So this is JavaScript, promise.all. It helps you to await if you have like two functions which are doing operations which are going to take time. You can wrap them inside promise.all, which is going to wait all those functions to be executed, all of them. So we are just creating an offset, another function, and where clause. And then we are calling in CRUD employees, which is our table. No, it's not table, it's a filter. As you can see, we have filters here. And then if include employees is there, it means that when we are fetching departments, we need employees to be there. So if that's the case, question mark, we need to query departments and find many. So this is like select all, where clause should now be the where filter we have here, which is going to filter everything and then use the filters we have. Some of these filters are being injected dynamically. For example, if we have a search filter, and when I mean search filter, I'm talking about, let me paste this file, which is did I paste it? I copied the wrong thing. There is app.http file, which I'm trying to paste here. Oh, yeah, we go. So a filter is something like this. So in the query params, let's say we are listing things. So let's say I'm getting all employees. This will fetch everything without any filter. But if I say I'm fetching all employees where page, I want to fetch the first page, and the page size is equals to 2. So page and page size, this is what I'm calling filters. And of course they are pagination, but they are filters. This is where we're injecting them dynamically. We are saying, hey, if they search, I want you to inject a filter known as I like, which is the opposite of like. Department's name is equals to this. This is just a search dynamic param. Okay. Where we have where clause filters.length, and then we're adding the filters which we're injecting. Anyway, you get the point. So if we have a filter like page, it will be injected here by spreading it inside this add statement. So these are all the filters we can use. So we're injecting them dynamically according to the query. So that helps you to create clean queries where you can have like these, you can have employees, you can sort and also order at the same time. Okay. You can do all those crazy things in the same URL. That's the beauty of this. So, and then we have this now, the statement itself. So after adding the where clause, the order function should be departments and then sort by. So sort by is this variable here. And then we can limit the page size using the page size, and then offset, and then employees true. So when we say employees true, it means when we are selecting, we are creating a join. Yes, we are joining the departments table with the employees table. So when the employees are true, we are going to return the data for both. Okay. So, but if employees are not included, we shall do something similar, but now without the employees table being fetched. Simple as that. And then we are returning the data according to how we have formatting it with a page size, the total number of rows, and other maths. It all depends with what you want to define that. So that is simple. Fetching is the biggest part. This is updating. Updating is easy. We're just doing the update statement from Drizzle, and then it has this set. So think of this as update table these, where this is blah blah blah. So set is where you include things. Where is where you like specify what you want to compare, and then do returning so that it will return something known as a row. If row is not found, throw an error, and not found exception. Else, if it is something to do with violation of things like constraints and those type of things, we have some helpers. I know we haven't had them. They're supposed to be inside here under errors. So we can have a helper, for example, Postgres errors. So this is a bunch of Postgres errors which usually happen every time. I've just added them like unique PG unique violation for constraints and foreign key violation for foreign key constraint. So this is it. So is unique should be able to be identified by this function. Okay. Good. Removing is simple. We are just doing database, delete, where, and then returning. Okay. So basically, this is a CRUD. Create is just db insert. Pass the data you want to be inserted. No, pass the database name you need to be used to insert, and then the values is where you pass the data to be inserted. And how are we getting these DBs? We are injecting Drizzle, which, if you remember very well, under database, Drizzle is what we have here as provider, right? So we have this provider, which is Drizzle, okay, which we are exporting. So the way you import these and use it is simply by just coming inside any service and then using the inject decorator, and then pass the name, and then make it private, and then read only so that it can be modified, and then give it a name, which is DB. And then we type it with the Drizzle DB object, which basically is just the constant we have. So with this, we are able to inject our database everywhere and use it to do the SAT, to do the query for fetching, to do the query for fetching one. As you can see, this is find fast. This is find many. Okay, find many as the name goes. Find the first one, which matches the query. Update, we are doing this DB update and set. So we're using more of the SQL type of syntax here. And then here we are just using delete. So that is CRUD on its own. So basically that's it for this call. I think we've gone through a lot of things. So the only thing maybe we missed to explain is how we are connecting the relationship. I'll do that within 1 minute. And to do that, I have a README, which is way detailed for this. So here we go. So this is how the DP on the README on the GitHub repo will look like with all the information. You shall see these relationships, departments, employee profile, all these. But the most important thing is the relationships. So let's talk about them. So the easiest way to know the relationships is know what relies to what. For example, departments. So one department will have many employees, okay? And the foreign key in the employees table will be department ID. Once you identify that, and you remember that we need to set the constraint to be on the read, set null, or cascade, whichever works for the purpose of that. With that, you're able to identify the relationship. Okay, so the way you do that in the code, now you have your department, you have defined your table. There's somewhere we had like relationship files or something. Okay, relationship.ts. So relationship.ts is where I've grouped all the relationships with a lot of detailed explanation. But as you can see, this file is just importing our schemas. So this is department schema, employee profile schema, employees schema, employee project schema, and all the project schema. Okay. So for example, one-to-one relationship, this is where you have one department and many employees. So how do we relate to that? So we just create a department relationship object. This is going to call relationship from Drizzle. And then the first thing we are comparing is the departments, because one department will have many employees. Okay. So this is their syntax, but just think of this as one department will have many, and then you open the arrow function where we are going to define the employees. And what are employees? We call them by naming it employees, but we say many, and then we pass the employee schema. Okay, so this is just the name, but this is the actual schema which we are linking, that one department will have many employees. Cool. So this is the department relationship. So we'll have several types of relationships. So employee, as we saw here, employee will have quite several relationships. For example, employee and employee profile, we have one-to-one type of relationship. Employees and employees project will have many-to-many relationships. And employees projects and projects will have many-to-many. Okay, so we'll go through this. So for a relationship, for the employees, we'll have many and one. So we have both of them. So for one, where we are comparing employees to employee profile, the relationship is this. We just say one employee will have one type of relationship with departments. So this is where we are passing the department schema, but we are naming this relationship with the name department, because when we are querying data, where we were using things like include departments, this is a term we shall be using, include departments, include profile. Okay, yeah. So, and then the field which you are going to join, this is the foreign key, is where the employee is. In the employees table, we have department ID. So that is a foreign key. And it is referencing the department ID inside the department table. Okay. Remember, we said a foreign key is a primary key inside a foreign table. Okay. So if that sinks in, this is just a repetition, but now for the many-to-many, we shall have a connection. Think of it as a relationship from one table and also a relationship from the other table. So these both relationships will make a combination of many-to-many type of relationship. So from the employees side, we have to define that employees will be related to projects with a many-to-many type of relationship. And into many-to-many type of relationship, we usually create a conjunction table. So this is a table that contains two foreign keys. When two foreign keys are used to connect two tables in a many-to-many type of relationship, we call them as composite keys. I think computer science students can help me with this. So this is a composite key. So inside employees project table, this will have two foreign keys from which are two primary keys from different tables. And that is on the employee side is how we connect that. So we have seen employees and employees project. So the employees project is a conjunction table. It is a table that is containing two foreign keys, which creates a composite key. So the projects table and the employees table, they have a many-to-many relationship via this employee project table. And the employee ID, which is a primary key inside the employee table, is a foreign key here. The project ID inside the projects table, which is a primary ID here, but here it is a foreign key, or what we call a composite key. Cool. So with that, on the project side, we shall see something similar to this. Okay. So where is that? So let's go to projects. So in the projects relationship, we are relating projects with employees, which now we are not using the employee's name, we are just using the member's name, but the connection is here. This is similar to what we have here. Okay. So inside the employee profiles, so employee profile where we have one-to-one, we also defining a relationship where employee's profile will relate to the employee's table via one-to-one. And this is the foreign key and this is the primary key. Cool. I think once you understand that, the relationships are easy. With that now, it's easy even to run the code. I don't know whether this, let me just run the one I know. Waste time to debug. So how do we run this project? This is quite easy. The first thing we need to do is to run Docker Compose. And I just like using the bash script. I won't do that, I'll do another way. So you don't want to run the API. I just want to run the database. So to do that, you can just come here and run service. This is if you have the, I think the Docker extension or something, or I don't know, but I think it should just run even without that. So with that, I'm just going to create a container known as CRUD modeling Postgres. And this I know will create even a database. So if I open my Docker, as you can see, it should have CRUD DB modeling, which is running. And if I open this container, I should see an image known as Postgres. And as you can see, it's well and it is running. Cool. So by just doing that, I have my database running. The next thing I need to do is maybe you can use on another terminal. And what I want to do is that since my database is running, I can just run my API. So pnpm run. Is it dev or start dev? see. Start dev. Okay. So start dev like that. So this is going to spin up my API. Okay. And on top of this, I want to duplicate this and also start my database via the DB Studio. So I just want to do npm run db dash studio. Okay, so this should give us a link which you can click and open. Cool. So as you can see now, we have our data. Okay, I had run this project before, so most of these tables will have some data. So as you can see, we have like employees table, we have project table, we have employee projects. So think of this as the conjunction table, which I said shall have our many-to-many type of relationship, which you can see we have employee ID, which is a sorry, it is employee ID, which is a composite key, and project ID, a composite key. And then we have departments, and we have projects and everything. Good. So with this now, we can be able to, if you have migration, by the way, since we don't have any to do that, you can just run generate, migrate, and push. But for this, my time is almost up. Let me just run some things. So if you have app.http, you can create something. So you can do like create this Gento employee, click send, employee this exist. So conflict 409. So this is caught by the common errors, Postgres errors, I think, which I told you. So it is going to help us to catch most of those. So if you have a duplicate employee, you can't recreate him, okay? But one thing we can do, we can try to create this second employee. He also exists. Cool. That employee also exists. Anyway, that's okay. But let's try to create an employee with an invalid payroll. Send this. You shall see that first name is too small. So we have the validation, we say with Zod. Just quickly show you where it is under modules. We are doing employees. Under details, create employee. So this validation is the one which is checking like is first name a string and is it minimum of 1 and a maximum of 100. So if it's an empty, it will throw this error. It is being caught inside the employee controller. Sorry, inside the employee controller. Where when you're creating an employee, we have our decorators or body, which we created as here. It is going to validate employee schema versus the data which is passing in, which we are just calling it create employee detail. So if this schema is not valid, it's going to throw the error. That's what we are getting. Cool. So let's fetch data, fetch our employees. We should have our paginated data with us. And as you can see, we have like a lot of employees inside this data array. Yeah, like that, which is cool. Let's fetch these employees, the first page, and then say the page size is 2. Send this. I should get just 2 employees, the first one and the second one. And you see we have the metadata part here. And it's saying page 1 and the page size is 2. So if I say like the page size to be like 5, I should get 5 employees. As you can see, these are 5 employees. And it will automatically calculate and check whether in the database, when we divide all the employees by 5, how many pages do we have? And that will give us like the total pages of. So we have a total of 20 employees. So if I say like I want the next page, so this is the first page. If I say fetch me page 2 and send this, it will skip the first page and go to the second employees, the second 5 employees. If that makes sense. Yeah, as you can see, these are the second 5 employees, and you see we are in page 2 and the page size and the remaining. You get the point. So that's the beauty of this if you have your sort and everything well or orchestrated. So you can also sort with ascending and descending. So if I send this and you see we are sorting by last name. So if you check the last name of the first guy is Anderson, it's A. Okay. And if you try to go down once, let's scroll. The last name of a guy like this is Gratian. So if you try to say this is ascending and call this descending, I hope it's that, and send this, we should have now the first guy being who? The last name being Young. Okay. So this is cool. Okay. So we have sorting filtering with us. We can combine them. Let's search. Let's search someone like Jane. So if I search Jane, it should have Jane. So if I search someone like Jane, no. Send this, we should not get any because it is going to match whether Jane exists in the database. We should get these and yeah. So that also works well. So let's say we want to fetch, let's say someone like Jane, we have this ID. Okay. We want to, no, I don't know. Oh, here's a department ID. We want to fetch employees with this department ID. So you can use this variable which I added here on top. Department ID like this and add that. So let's go back down here. So we can fetch employees with that. We should have get Jane and others. Cool. So you get the point. All these I've created for you guys. You can go and query, play with it, and see everything. So okay. Oh my God, that is 2 hours. I think I'm going to stop there. So I'm just going to push this code to our GitHub repo so that you guys can play with that code. You shall see the URL just in case you don't know where it is. You shall see that under the comment section of our meetup page. You shall see the recording of this call and also the link to the GitHub. So if you open it, you should be able to go straight to where the code base is, and you can just clone it, click the verbs or like wherever it is there, and maybe you can share with other people so that they can use this code base to build something. I know almost all the APIs will rely on some type of relationship aspect of it, and that is so good. So we have the API project setup. That was our previous call. Today we had this. So basically, I'm going to push that code link in some few seconds here. Or you can just go to our GitHub, by the way. You can just go to GitHub and you'll find it. So I know this is going to load a little bit. Okay, it's fast. So under node backend, you shall see project number 2. You'll see all the code there. And this is our page. I would like you guys to go there. Maybe you can start. That will be good. You can also fork the whole project so that every time we upload something, you can just go git pull and then it will give you the updates. That's all cool. Yeah. So any question? You guys are quite silent. Without question, I'd like to end there and say thank you for joining the call. Um, I don't know what people decided. If Bernard, like the way I've done it, is it lengthy? Is it okay? Is that what you were suggesting? Okay, we should be doing, of course.
Yes. Hello. I think the way you've done it is better. Due to like the limited time we have. So I would recommend that given that some of us it's first time interacting with Drizzle RM, perhaps if we find enough time, you can do a mix up of maybe if it's a new concept, some little bit of like coding, but going through the code also it's fine. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Yes, Kevin. That's
Yeah,
it's confusing. Eh? The Spider-Man name.
yeah, we have so many Kevins. So I was requesting maybe, are you in a position to share the recordings of this? Maybe
Yep.
I can start from scratch.
Yep. So, do you have access to our meetup page?
No, maybe you can also share that link.
Okay, I'm just going to share it on the call. So in every call we have, we usually create an event on Meetup. And if you go there, as I was saying, I'll always add a link for the GitHub link and the recording. So we have just 2 calls so far. The previous one was this one. If you go to our Meetup page by the just so in the chat, everyone should have access to that link. So this was a previous call. So if you go to API project setup, click on this, you have all the information in the chat system. You have the link to the YouTube where we are uploading this call after this. Then you also have a link to the GitHub. So all in one place. And if you have a question, please leave it on the comment section or in our WhatsApp group, whichever works for you. Yes, Banan.
Yeah, I think I'll also recommend maybe if some guys who are in the call to join the WhatsApp group, the Kenya Data Platform WhatsApp group. So, because there it's easier to get the links when you share. Yes.
Yeah. So let me just share the link to our WhatsApp group right now. So the link is on the chat. So if you're on this call, you can join our WhatsApp group. The link is on. I hope you guys are able to access the chat. I'm sharing them on. Are you guys able to see the chat? I've shared, like Kevin, have you seen the link to the WhatsApp group?
No, from my side, I can't see anything on the chats.
That's bad. Let me first stop the recording and then